Welcome, my friend, to the next episode Red Delta Project Podcast, helping you maximize your results with minimalist approaches to diet and exercise. Today's episode, we're talking about the common challenges and questions I receive regarding lower body training, the squats, the lunges, and how to build strength and functional capacity in your lower body with calisthenics training. Just as I did with the push-up and pull-up question episodes, I left a full description down below with the questions and their timestamps. So if you want to skip ahead to certain questions, you can do so down below in the description. All right, so first challenge question I often get is when people say, I'm doing squats and lunges, but I don't feel it in the glutes. What's going on? There's a couple of reasons for this. One is gluteal amnesia is a very common and persistent problem because we're sitting so much. Always remember, your muscles do not work because of the exercise or the workout that you do. The only thing that can engage your muscles is your brain. So your brain tells your muscles how to work. And just like anything else your brain does, like how you talk and breathe and even mannerisms with your hand, it's all down to habit. So if you're not used to using your glutes because you're sitting and your brain has literally forgotten how to use your ass, it's not going to use it very well in your exercises, even if those exercises are technically supposed to be using those muscles. So the best way to get around this is, once again, practice using your glutes and your hamstrings and your entire hip complex all day, every day. When you're standing, when you're sitting, when you are standing up out of a chair, when you're climbing stairs, try to consciously engage your glutes all the time to rebuild up that habit. And it's gonna take a little mental work at first, but eventually it will reinforce that habit, and then, like any habit, it just goes on autopilot and you've got to correct it. The other thing too is remember that muscles are harder to engage in an elongated position. Like guys can make a bicep like this with their arm bent and they're like, yeah, I got my bicep on. But a lot of people cannot turn on their bicep with their arm is straight because it's an elongated position. Once again, that takes a lot of practice. It takes a conscious effort. Your muscles don't respond to the exercise you do. They respond to the signals from your brain. So trying to engage your glutes in a bottom position when you're lunging and squatting can really help with that. And one of the best ways you can do that is to ensure that you have the same angle with your torso as your shin. Try doing this with a lunge or a Bulgarian split squat. It's a weird thing about how the body works, but if those two angles are parallel, you'll have a much easier time engaging your glutes. But if your torso is upright and your knee is forward or vice versa, you're gonna have a little bit of a disconnect between your upper and lower body, making it harder to engage those muscles. Second question is, people say, I love the whole idea of progressive bodyweight training for the lower body. But stability, like I feel so unbalanced and unstable. And this is a very big problem when it comes to calisthenics training for the lower body. Because if your stability sucks, you cannot get stronger. That's one of the assets of the neuromuscular hierarchy that I talk about in grind style calisthenics. You're only as strong as you are stable. Now, how you improve that is, once again, in our hips, we improve our strength, our tension control, and our mobility in our hips, because the vast majority of your stability comes from your hips. But a lot of times, because people don't have good strength and ability to engage their hips, it's not a stability exercise, it's a balance exercise. Balance and stability are actually somewhat different. And here's the way I look at it. Is balance is like if you took a broom handle and you're palming the end of it and you're just trying to balance it on your hand. That's balance. Now, balance doesn't have a lot of value in the world of health and fitness. It doesn't give you a lot of functional ability. You can have great balance. It doesn't do you much good because as soon as anything comes along, that breath of wind, you're going to lose your balance. Instead, stability is a use of strength. So that's like taking that same broom handle and grabbing it and controlling it in space, and then you can move it around at will. That's stability. And that's what you want to really maximize your lower body. So we want strong hips. I always recommend using the lateral hip exercise, the overcoming isometric. That'll be in my upcoming book, which will be out fairly shortly. That exercise alone will potentially revolutionize your lower body training. Third exercise I often get is, can you really adequately build a decent amount of strength and muscle in your lower body with just your body weight? And this is kind of coming again a little bit a misdirected question, because a lot of stuff in our fitness culture is method-based. We think that if you do a certain method or exercise, then you get a certain result. This is actually not how fitness works. That's like saying, I need a certain car in order to drive to the store. It's like, no, you don't need a certain car, and your ability to get to the store doesn't depend on the kind of car you drive. But we've got this idea in our mind because our fitness culture has long told us, do exercise X, get result Y, or do method X, get result Y, and that's how it works. But it actually isn't at all how it works. And you can find evidence of this everywhere. Just walk into any gym and someone's like, oh yeah, you lift free weights, you're gonna get big and jacked. Well, there's a lot of guys lifting free weights who aren't getting anything out of it. Or do this diet, you're going to lose a lot of weight, and lots of people do that diet and they don't lose anything. Okay? This is not how fitness actually works. You don't get a result from a particular method because your ability to get bigger and stronger legs has almost nothing to do with the exercises and methods you use. It depends on your proficiency of the methods and exercising you're using. So that's why I'm always saying you can get bigger and stronger, but it depends on your proficiency. And that's why your focus for all of your lower body training, just training in general, should not be to just work hard or do the right exercise or the right program, but instead to have the goal of, I want to get really good at doing this. Next question is, do you really need to squat ass to grass? A very big polarizing question here. A lot of people are like, don't squat deep, it's bad for your knees, it's bad for you, don't blah, blah, blah. And other people are like, you have to do it in order to count. This is similar to the dead hang question I get with pull-ups that I addressed in the previous video. People say it's bad, don't do it, and other people are like, it only is worth it if you do it. Once again, neither side is correct. But instead, what we want to do is, again, go after that proficiency. The more proficient you get, the better you will get at using a bigger range of motion. However, don't make the mistake of thinking that it only counts if you use that type of range of motion, because you're trying to make your muscles work progressively harder over time. If you can do that with using range of motion as one of the elements that can allow you to work harder, then yes, it will be beneficial, but it's not effectively necessary. So trying to get as deep as possible while maintaining tension, you don't want to just drop into it and lose all the tension, because no tension, no benefit. But you want to make sure that you're at least passing through or getting to the point where you have the most amount of tension in the muscle. Next question is dealing with knee pain. Knee pain, very common occurrence. Big mistake that often is made is, again, because we have a method-based approach in most of our cases of fitness, is we think the pain is being created due to the exercise or the method we're using. Oh, the knee is going over the toes, that causes knee pain. Oh, sissy squats are bad for deep squats, whatever. We blame what we're doing, when the reality is what you're doing has almost nothing to do with it. Because what is really causing the pain isn't the exercise that you're doing, it's the proficiency of the exercise. In most cases, it's because there's not enough engagement in your hips and the muscles in the back of your leg to balance out the stress around your joints. Now, first of all, I should also say, we always respect pain. We never ignore it. Pain is Mother Nature's way of telling you you're screwing something up. Always respect pain and get it taken care of. Second is always make sure that it's not caused by an actual structural problem. You could have knee pain because of a torn meniscus, and nothing I say here is going to help that. Go to a doctor, get it taken care of. But what I'm talking about here is an imbalance in the force going through your body. So if you have an imbalance, you have the force going into your joints, and that's going to cause pain. But if you can get the muscles around the joints to engage in a balanced way, the same force, or even far more energy, will go right through your joint. And that's what often happens with our knees. We're like, oh, my knees hurt. Something's not engaging. Something's not turning on. It has nothing to do with your knees going over your toes or deep squats or sissy squats or anything like that. Those exercises are not causing the problem. They're exposing it. There's something that is saying you're doing something wrong. Something's not engaging the way it should be. Get it taken care of. And that's very important to know. Because if you don't understand that and you say, oh, knees over the toes are bad, I'm going to do shorter, you're not actually taking care of the real problem. And so you're carrying that problem over to whatever else you're doing, and that problem will not only persist, it can potentially get even worse. Calf training is the next thing I get a lot of questions on. Naturally so, because that's one of my most aesthetically impressive areas of my body. is my lower legs. So people are saying, how do I get big calves like you? And a lot of folks say it's all genetics, to which I always reply, well, could you tell my calf genetics to get to the rest of my body, please? Really appreciate that. But it all comes down to, yet again, that neuromuscular proficiency. I got really lucky because when I was younger in Taekwondo, I had a friend who was really good at jumping and explosive off the floor. He could stand 10 feet from you and put a side kick into your belly before you could blink. He was so fast. And I was like, what's the secret? He's like, it's all in the toes. It's all in the calves. So he got me doing like calf training and got me in the mindset of everything on the balls of your feet all day, every single day. Walk, run, skip. You should never have your heels on the ground, right? And I didn't take it to that extreme, but I was always very ball of the foot dominant, very calf dominant with my walking, running, going upstairs. When I got into bike racing, basically my brain was like, all right, we've got to ride this bike as fast as possible. What do we got? And I'm like, well, we've got good power in our calves. Good, use the calves. My quads had nothing. My quads didn't have very much power at all. I'd get on a leg extension machine and barely be able to move the lightest weight. But my calves, that was where my brain thought I had most of my power. So I was using those a heck of a lot. And that's where it all comes down to, is a lot of people cannot build up their calves because they don't have that neuromuscular proficiency with their calves. This is the test I give everybody, is stand flat-footed and flex your calves as hard as you can. Again, a lot of folks can do it in a flex position. They can flex their calves when they're up on the ball of the foot, just like you can flex your bicep when your arm is bent. But can you keep a lot of tension in your calves when your foot is flat? A lot of people can't do it. They're like, can't get the calves to turn on, which means that for the vast majority of everything you're doing with your legs, your calves are almost doing nothing. So of course they can't develop very much. So build up that neuromuscular proficiency. Practice engaging your calves all the time. When you're flat-footed, when you're seated, when you are walking, stay on the ball of your foot, take the same approach I did. And that'll improve that neuromuscular proficiency, and your calves will get a lot more of that grow and building stronger stimulus for everything you're doing. Lunges, squats, riding a bike, and even calf raises, yes. And then finally, asking a lot of questions about what's the best way to train legs? And what's the best sets and reps? Should you go heavy? What about sprinting? What about jumping and all these things? Your legs are like a Swiss Army knife as far as their capability. They can produce strength, they can produce stability, they can produce power, they can produce a wide range of capability. If you really want to get the most out of your leg training, you want to train them in a number of ways. You don't want to just do heavy squats or pistol squats or jump training and just make that your only thing. Instead, what you want to do is use your legs in multiple ways. So on one day, you may be doing like heavy weighted pistol squats, sets of 5x5, for example. And then another day, you may run up a steep hill sprints and stuff. Another day, you've got jump training. So what you're doing is you're taking your legs and you're really expanding upon their functional capabilities, but in a number of directions. So you want to use your muscles in many different ways. Don't overthink it and stuff. It's try to explode explosive power, running up hills and stuff for a little bit of endurance, high rep training, low rep training, stability training. All of it is good. And just work it in however you like. It doesn't really matter too much what your program looks like. As long as you're training your legs for power, endurance, and strength, let's say those are the three magical things, a couple times a week, I don't really care how you're doing it. It's going to produce much better results than if you're only training strength and that's it. Whew, all right, a lot of questions there. I hope I addressed a lot of things that you were worrying about with building and developing your lower body, especially with calisthenics training. Further questions down below in the description. You can also find the other 2 videos here on push-up and pull-up questions that I answered last week. And next week, I'm going to be addressing ab and core training as well. So if you have any further questions about that, leave that down below in the comments section as well. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next week. Be fit, live free.